Welcome to the Optimized Pharmacy Podcast, where today we are discussing strategies to grow your pharmacy, tools to accelerate that growth, and how top pharmacies are executing and winning. I'm here with Logan Morse from Keystone Compounding Pharmacy. As always, Logan is rocking a new haircut. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, I'm going to try to convince him to keep it. I think you guys will, maybe the audience retention will go up if they, see your new haircut versus like the buzz cut. So we're going to see if just from an analytics standpoint, he should keep it. But today we're going to be talking about drug-induced nutrient depletion, selling more supplements, like tools and resources to make that happen. Not that you need any incentive or any reason to do it, but obviously moving into 2023, maybe if there is a sort of recessionary environment, although we've done a podcast already about kind of maybe the insulation that pharmacy might have, it would still be good to sharpen your skills when it comes to sales and marketing and helping your patients. And if they're going to buy the supplements already, why not buy them from your pharmacy? So that's what we're going to be talking about.
I totally agree. And I think a big part of this is, and I don't think this, I know this, you're doing the work, you need to monetize the work that you're already doing. And drug-induced nutrient depletion is such an easy process, and you can streamline it into your pharmacy that even if you're in a town of 1,000 people like I used to be in, and I think we can kind of go into that backstory, you can monetize it and go 300, 400, 500% of your margins of what you used to be doing on your supplements.
Yeah. So we're going to break some beliefs around what's possible because Logan's done it. So not to take you guys on a little bit of a journey by any means from like a backstory perspective, but we'll have him on the podcast next week. But one of the first pharmacies I helped out with was my dad's pharmacy. And one of the first things that we did that worked really well, that kind of really got Growth Farm into pharmacy specifically, was kind of like the 6-week health coaching program that we kind of pioneered in some ways, learned from other industries and others. And how it was kind of built around was the ability to get someone into a consultation, sell them a program, and then upsell them on supplements. And working with my dad's pharmacy, they kind of had like a dedicated pharmacist that really knew supplements. And so he was probably most eager. He's now a partner at the pharmacy, so it made a lot of sense. He was happy to do it. And he made a lot of supplement recommendations and helped a lot of patients out, got a lot of patients to try out brands like Orthomolecular, and instead of just sitting on the shelf, they were actually moving some product. And what surprised me about that experience is that I think initially I probably just assumed that any pharmacist on my dad's pharmacy could do it, But what we learned, very quickly working with this pharmacy is that only Jordan really knew how to do it. And so that led to scheduling conflicts with kind of the consultations that we were trying to set up, because it was really only built around one person, not just anyone at the pharmacy. And so fast forward to working beyond just with my dad's pharmacy, but with many other pharmacies, we quickly ran into the issue where we built this program around health coaching and making recommendations around these high margin supplements that were beneficial for patients that they're buying otherwise and that you don't need a prescription for, right? And a lot of the pharmacies we bumped into didn't feel confident. And that was kind of like a deal breaker, where we'd get these pharmacies on board for like wanting to do this cash-based program with us. But when we kind of told them, here's how it works from a workflow perspective, we lost a lot of potential customers because they didn't know how to recommend supplements and they didn't feel comfortable doing it. And Logan was actually one of the first pharmacies that we worked with that wasn't an issue. And so we kind of want to talk to pharmacies, pharmacy owners, in this episode about what it looks like to go from someone that didn't really know, doesn't really feel confident, to, being a lot more confident, and kind of going through Logan's journey a little bit, because it's not like you necessarily learn this at pharmacy school, right? This was kind of a journey that you went on your own. So to roll right into that, like, where'd you start? Because, if you're an interested pharmacy owner, like, where's a good resource? Where's a good company? Like, how did you build your confidence?
So for me, I really first started out, I got on a Zoom web call with actually Jeff Robbins, and he kind of helps out with Orthomolecular. And I'm going to preface this. In pharmacy school, we do not learn enough about over-the-counter items, and I don't think I ever really recommended any supplements to any of my patients. I've always told them, go get it through your food, or, it's only in your body for a few minutes and you pee out the rest, right? Because that's what we're told. But it's not really until you start to experience it, I think, for yourself. I think there's a big understanding when you do something yourself. But not to get off track, start off with Jeff Robbins. He was talking about CoQ10 and probiotics and magnesium. And at the time, I was 40 pounds heavier than I am now. I was, just struggling with brain fog. I check a prescription. I'm like, did I really check that? Let me go grab that back, look at it. Yes, I checked everything. It's good to go. And when that started happening 4 or 5 times throughout the day, I was like, I thought I was having like dementia. I kid you not. I almost scheduled a doctor's appointment because I thought I was getting dementia. And so I was like, screw it. I'm going to buy the supplements. I'm going to try them for a month. I'm going to see what happens. And after that month, I didn't have brain fog. I started working out again, so that helped with weight loss, and I started eating better. But the supplements, I think, also played a role in that, kept my body from being fatigued all the time. And I lost 40 pounds, and I was just like, okay, maybe it's just
not in a month.
It was 12 weeks, but which is super accelerated for a lot of people. But I was really dedicated. I kept everything on time. I was eating specific calories. Like, if you do the work, you're going to get the results that you want, and you can take that to any aspect. But, really focusing back in on those nutritional supplements is I think, a big portion. So I got myself feeling better. So I said, what's next? So then I switched out. I switched out my parents' whole supplements. I bought them, some multivitamins, and I said, here, you got to start it. They started feeling better. I was like, okay, it can't just be like 2 people. That's kind of like a weird fluke. So then I helped out my buddy's wife who was struggling with migraines, and she was taking a lot of anti-seizure medications for her migraines. And now she's at the point where she's not on any of those medications, and she just takes magnesium to help with those migraines. And I think she has like maybe 1 or 2 migraines a month, and she was having 4 or 5 per week. So that's when it really blew off the door. Like, this stuff helps.
Yeah, that's where that belief was broken. So before you go beyond that, can you highlight a little bit? I don't even know his full resume, but like, who's Jeff Robbins? Why Jeff Robbins?
So Jeff Robbins is very interesting to me. So he was a pharmacy owner out of Peoria, Illinois, and his big claim to fame, and I don't know Jeff, exuberantly well, but he was doing $1.5 million of supplement sales a year. And that's not a I'm not misquoting the number. Like, he has told me multiple times, like $1.5 million. It's a lot of money. And
yeah,
some people are happy when they do 2,000 a month. Like, he was doing
100 plus a month. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me said that there was a need in the market. Like, there are individuals who are seeking this out, or that the belief is being broken at the pharmacy level and it can be done. So he goes into a lot of detail. He's been, trained to do, trained on the supplements and how it interacts with the body and how it helps out. And he built out a practice there through his compounding pharmacy. So I think that's another big key is, a lot of individuals who are already going to compounding pharmacies are already kind of more health minded than, I feel like in the typical retail space. At least that's how it was, when I worked in large chain retail. But neither here nor hide, or hide nor here. Anyway,
here nor there.
Here nor there. Anywhere. It's like Dr. Seuss all over again. Don't worry. So he came, I talked to him on the phone a couple times, walked through some other patients that I started working with through the program, that you had got us started on, and everything that he had kind of educated me on made sense. And then what I did is I just took that information and said, how do I make a patient understand this? And I think that's the biggest key is you need to make it take the information, no matter where you get it from, and make it so a patient understands that. And that's where a lot of like my analogies come from. And trust me, my analogies are never dull.
Works in progress.
Oh, it's always understandable. It's just whether or not I communicate it out.
Do you get any of your analogies from like your kids? Because I feel like analogies would be great to use with kids in some ways. Like you want to talk to patients, not necessarily like their kids, but you want to make it simple, right?
Right. And a lot of times, like I rotate a lot of things towards like gas for like energy, because everyone understands like you have to have gas in your car to go. So same thing with the body. Or I'll like communicate things as like a big thing that I always talk about is the body being a clock tower, and you have all these cog wheels that are turning, right? But if you don't have the certain cog wheels moving in the right direction, your clock tower doesn't work. So it's like simple things that people understand.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that. And I think Jeff was a big portion of breaking my belief.
Yeah. So he broke your belief, and then from like a technical standpoint, from, you know, continuing education, like what does that look like to where, you know, you're at the point now, you do a lot of consultations, work with patients, you know, feel really confident, like post Jeff, then what? So
post Jeff, I joined IFM, so the Institute of Functional Medicine, started going through their program. I was paying for it by myself. And long story short, I ended up leaving the company I was with, and, you know, came to a new pharmacy, and the owner was more than willing to, you know, help me, you know, continue on my path of education. So they paid for my fellowship through A4M, which is they're known for doing like the fellowship in anti-aging and functional medicine. So that's the dual board certification process I'm in now, which is really good. I like it a little bit more than IFM's program, just because it feels more like course based, where IFM's didn't feel that way to me. But you know, that's kind of how you can continue it. There's a lot of other programs. There's you know, several through like Florida, some Florida universities, and some other ones as well. I think there's one in Texas as well. But it's all about kind of what works best for you. They've got online courses. You can go in person, or like another like tools that I've seen. I've just kind of found through like podcasts.
Gotcha. And just, you know, continue to learn, continue to sharpen. So let me ask this. You know, we got started together, you know, years ago at this point. Where you were then to where you are now in terms of like confidence level, your ability to where, you know, making those recommendations, talking to patients about their health, like how many leaps and bounds better are you now than you were back then?
Right. So when I first started out, I would probably compare myself to a kid trying to sell watches, right? They're not going to be very good, because they're just going to say, hey, do you need to tell the time? Here's a watch, right? It's going to be like very minute, like talking points. Whereas now if I'm that kid selling a watch, I'm like, hey, by the way, this watch does X, Y, Z. It can go underwater 50 meters. It can do X, you know, this and that and this, and here's how it works. And, you know, you
the dials and yeah,
you can really go into depth on it now. When I started, it was bad. I mean, it was just like,
but where I was going with that is not necessarily just that you've improved substantially because you continue to learn and invest in your education, but also like you started when you were that kid selling a watch, right? Like you were willing to jump in the fire, jump in 2 feet, you know, and start sitting down with patients and learning as you went. You know, that's another thing that I think you should touch on really briefly. Like when you sit down with these patients, and it was so early on, like how often did you not know the answer? And then also, what did you do when you didn't know the answer because you weren't there?
Yeah, there were a lot of times I didn't know the answer. And that's perfectly okay. And a lot of pharmacists, I think, struggle with that. They always want to know all the information. So I think my first case was I had a patient come to me who was chronically fatigued, and they were 25. So that to me, I was like, why is a 25-year-old tired all the time? And so that's actually, I had reached out to Jeff and I said, hey, I got this patient who's tired all the time. You know, their thyroid looks normal. But this is also when I was like, their TSH is normal, which is the thyroid level that we read. But I didn't look at T3 or T4 or reverse T3 or TPO because it's not something that I really knew to look for.
Yeah.
And so, Jeff had said, hey, look at those things, let me know what you find out. And we ended up figuring out that this patient just had like a mitochondrial disorder. And so I was like, all right, Logan, what do you need to make the mitochondria run? Right. And so ends up coming back to the cell and understanding how the Krebs cycle works and what you need to fuel the Krebs cycle and making sure the cell membrane is healthy so you can transmit signals in and out. But I didn't know that then. And you need I'm one of those people where I learn from like doing. Like some people learn just by like listening. I'm a doer kind of learner. And so it was great because the next time I saw a patient, I said, you have similar symptoms to somebody I've already treated once who's already doing better. Let's try
it. Made it easier, to come back and have that second conversation and also have more confidence in like the product that you're going to recommend after that first patient started to see results. So, I mean, I know the answer to this, but like when a patient brought that to your attention and you didn't know the answer, did you just say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you? Was that like your response, or like how did you deal with patients where you don't know the answer? Because I think that's probably where a lot of pharmacists hang up is like when they don't know, what do I say? How do I? Because you don't want to come across as like you're this health authority, and then like in this instance get asked a question, be like, I don't know. Like that's damaging to the ego. You know what I mean? Right. It hurts the ego.
Right. So I've got a couple of different catchphrases that I like to utilize. One is, I don't want to give you a wrong answer, and I want to make sure that your health is the priority here. So let me look into some studies, or let me look into some information, and then I'm going to send you an email as soon as I'm done. And then the other one I like to utilize is, I am not really strong in this, if it's something off the wall. Even like today I had a patient who is a 20-year-old male who suffers from autism. That's not my strong point. And, but I'm, optimizing his supplementation, and I just said, hey, like that's out of my clinical, expertise. And I'll own up to that. And I told that person, like, that's just out of my clinical expertise, but here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to dig into the studies. I'm going to learn about it. And then we're going to see from there what's going to be the best for you. And they appreciate that because they understand that you're just trying to take care of them, and you're owning up to the fact that you may not be excellent in what that subject is, but you're at least going to do the legwork to get them the answer. And at the end of the day, that's all those patients want. They just want an answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the honesty of it is helpful, not just in like, you should be honest just in general, but also, when you are honest and you say, I don't know, or even I'm not super strong in this subject, but I do know X would be beneficial. Like, I think that honesty makes you more believable. And so then when you do come back and make that recommendation, like the patient has confidence that like you put the time in, right? That you looked into it. And so like when you come back, and maybe the recommendation is you should go see someone versus like, here's a supplement or here's like a product for you. Either way, that next kind of, whatever your call to action is, quote unquote, whatever you're kind of directing them to do, like I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, they're a lot more willing to do that.
Yeah. Yep. And so 9 times out of 10, they take my recommendation. And I also think by doing that, you're going to give yourself more time, because when you go see a traditional doctor, a lot of times they don't just say, yep, you have this, here's what you need. All right. They disappear, right? They leave your room, and what you're not seeing is that they're looking up information, then say, okay, cool, here's the therapy that's best for what I think that they have. And then they come back in the room and they say, hey, Johnny, here's what we're going to do, right? So instead of just, thinking on the fly like that, you're giving yourself that time to be more prepared. And then in doing so, when you give them that recommendation, it's much more likely to work. And then when it works well for them, then they're like, oh, this person knows what they're doing, versus just off the cuff just saying, well, I think this is going to be the best. I hope it works. Then they have a poor outcome. It's just taking the time to do a good job.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a phenomenal point that you bring up with the doctors, because like doctors, and I'm not saying pharmacists aren't willing to do this, but if you're kind of scared of that I don't know moment, like doctors, PAs, etc., they're very common, for them to say like, I don't know, like I'm going to look into this, or I'm going to get another opinion on this. Like, as much as they want to have the answers, like they're totally comfortable with that I don't know moment. And I think, if you're a pharmacist, if you're someone who's scared of making the recommendations, sitting down with patients, etc., like you can start with a 30% kind of like, I'm good at 30%, 70%. I'm probably going to have to like tell the patient I need to look something up, or I need to look into it. Like, even if you can just start with that 30%, that's better than sitting on the sidelines till at your 80, 90%. You haven't monetized at all the entire time. You've probably been paying out of pocket for a lot of these tools and resources and courses to learn from, when like you could have been helping patients years ago.
Right. And the thing is if you think about community pharmacy, we're expected to know everything. And it's unreasonable to be an expert in every medication, in every drug class. That's why you see providers specializing. You go see a podiatrist. They're really good about feet. You probably ask them questions about diabetes. They're probably not so strong.
Yeah.
So people understand that when you say like, hey, I'm just not an expert in that, or that's not my strong suit, I kind of say that to them. I say, hey, I know a lot about a little, or a little about a lot. I can't know everything. And they understand it. They're like, well, yeah, I don't know everything about my job either. And I'm like, yeah, cool. It's perfect. I'm glad that we agree. Yeah. And then we just move on to the next point. So,
yeah. So you go through this learning process. You're obviously a lot more competent than you are now. But for the pharmacist that's, not, or the pharmacist that's trying to get good quickly, can you talk a little bit about the product that we made to maybe help pharmacists with your experience have more success talking to patients? So I think
absolutely
we can start with version 1 if you want to, kind of get into the backstory, and then we can get to V2.
Yeah. So let me break out V1 right here. So what I like is sometimes you have lulls in your day and you only have time for 30 or 60 seconds of learning. And so what we did is we made some cards here that have, this is version 1. So version 1 was definitely a product that we worked on, and it's a lot better now, but essentially it tells you what medications you should be counseling on all the time, right? These are scripts that you're seeing day in and day out, and you should be having these conversations with these patients, because I personally feel like now if I don't, I'm doing my patients a disservice. Like I'm actually harming them. But to go on, it talks about what medications to watch out for, what supplements you should be recommending for those medications, as well as just some additional tips. And the drug-induced nutrient depletion cards actually have the videos on there with the QR code that you can watch and get more information, which I think is an excellent tool, not only for yourself, but your whole team, because they also need to be on board. Version 2, which I think is beautiful, I like it quite a bit, is here. And so you can see that we've got some sales training there as well, because are you as a pharmacist a salesman? No. But sometimes you need to give somebody what they know what they want, right? They want to feel better. They want to sleep better. They want to have more energy, but they don't know what they need. And that's where you need to come in and tell them what they need. So give them what they need, based on what they're looking for. And so there's also, generic like vitamin C, you're talking about black cohosh, and it goes into dosing and all that fun stuff. So really good tools that I've utilized to help train my team as well. Actually, one of my members was like, this is really cool. I wish I could, have more of these, because obviously I think we have 52 cards in the deck, and there's a lot more supplements out there, but these are the top main supplements that you're going to be seeing. And I think they're a really good tool to have.
Yeah. So the idea birthed out of like the initial part of this conversation, which is, there's a need where pharmacists need to have tools that they can refresh their skills on. So maybe you know a ton about like drug-induced nutrient depletion, or you know a bunch about supplements, right? But maybe your weakness is on the sales side. And so the deck is broken into 3 sections, one of those including the most common objections that you're going to hear. And so Logan and I worked on these for months. They're obviously, something that you can buy. So Logan's got an objection up there, and so we got the most common that you're going to see on the front end. Like, I want to shop around, or, let me talk to my doctor. I want to think about it. All those that you hear all the time in independent pharmacy. And then on the backside, we'll have how to handle that objection. Because again, even if you know what you're talking about, there are instances where you do need to convince that customer to make that decision. And it's not because you're convincing because you want the sale, because you're convincing that you can help them, but they just need to kind of be sold. And so it's not a bad thing to have that sales skill. And so
right.
Many pharmacists have the information, or many of them that do have the information are scared of the sales side. So we kind of tried to make some cards specific to that piece. And then for all the pharmacists that struggle with the supplement side and what to recommend, we made 30 of the top nutrients that you're going to see in a lot of the supplements that you probably carry, 8 cards around the top drug-induced nutrient depletions, and then I think it's like 12 cards around the most common objections, to kind of break it up into the core categories of, what you need to know. So drug-induced nutrient depletion, obviously being some of that low-hanging fruit, the nutrients to be, to have the ability to kind of take a product and have a general understanding of what's included in it, what the benefits are, and then the sales piece as well, so that you don't just have the information, but you have the ability to sell that information, because your patients sometimes need to be sold to make that right decision. So there's nothing wrong with helping them make the right decision.
Absolutely. And where a big piece of that comes into too is you should be recommending on every script. I wholeheartedly believe that. When you're having that conversation and when you're talking to your patients, I think this is kind of off on a little tangent here, but you should be communicating with your patients from the moment that they walk in to when they come up to the counter, and just finding out how their day is, right? Because that's when you get that information of what's kind of going on. If you don't say anything to them, you're not going to know what they want. They want something to help them fall asleep, right? I feel super tired all the time. I can't fall asleep at night. Cool. I know you need some magnesium, and then here's why. And then you can walk through it with them. And I think that's part of that like sales process. Is it's not even, I hate to say sales. I think it's much, the way I think about it is I'm just helping the person. Like, how do I help them? Cool. Here's something that can help you. And the other side of this is make sure when you're selecting a brand of supplements that they're a reputable brand who stands behind their product. So one of the brands we utilize, they have a money back guarantee. If the product doesn't do what you say it's going to do, has an adverse reaction, makes them have diarrhea, constipation, whatever, you can refund the patient the full amount. So there's no risk to the patient. And then they'll credit your account or send you a new bottle of whatever supplement it was. So I just tell my patients, hey, no problem. If this doesn't do what I say it's going to do, bring it back to me. You lose nothing other than you're going to feel better, and I can almost guarantee it. So to get off my soapbox there, sorry for that, but I think that's a really good point of these cards, is that it's not selling, it's making your patients feel better. Yeah.
And I think that's hard for, again, like you mentioned, most pharmacists to hear those words and think of that subject and want to get better at, which is sales. But like you said,
right,
it's helping. And you can not want to be good at sales and watch your business struggle, or you can get good at sales and make those recommendations, help your patients, right? We're not suggesting that you should recommend supplements that won't. But we also do believe that more recommendations should come from pharmacists, because as inadequate as you feel, there are far less adequate people that are making tons of recommendations that do not have the context that most pharmacists have. And that's kind of like the fight in some ways, and the urge, that we make, the plea to pharmacists is like, you have their medications in front of you. if anyone has ever gone into I'm not calling them out here, but if you've ever gone into a GNC and not saying that that's your place, you should buy all your supplements, but if you went in there and you were looking at, let's just say, for example, multivitamins or fish oil or I don't even think they carry probably CoQ10, but,
I'm sure they do. They'll stop.
Yeah, sure. They have everything on those shelves. But if you go in there, like, that's not a conversation. They're like, oh, what medications are you taking? It's like, what are you in for? And then like you get some high school kid making recommendations about here's what supplements you should buy. And so if you're comparing yourself against like perfection, I think like maybe that's just the wrong comparison. It should be against like all the other, places where people can go spend those same dollars and get far worse results than you. You know what I mean?
Right. And I agree. And so many of those supplements do interact with medications, right? So you've got GNC Jakes or Vitamin Shop Victorias, that's just the way I like to call them, that are just blanket recommending, oh, you should get some fish oil, it's good for you. Well, if this person is, has a coagulant disorder, right, and you give them something that's going to make them bleed more, you're probably not going to do them any good. Like that's a poor recommendation. But they're not going to know that. They're just be like, yeah, I want to make more money. I want to make more money on commission. I get it. They want to make money too, but they don't know the information that they need to know in order to make those recommendations. And I think, something else that I want to kind of hit on is the objection cards are the same objections sometimes I hear pharmacists say, like, oh, I don't have time to do this. Well, why not? You don't have time to make your patients feel better, right? Or how do you make time, right? And then work through the objections on yourself,
which is funny that you bring that up because you're right. If you complain about the objections that you get from your patients of like they give me there's not enough time or I can't afford this, right? Like you could almost take these cards and flip them around and, maybe look in the mirror a little bit and say, like, if I'm giving these excuses, right, I can't be mad when my patients give these excuses.
Right.
And so, maybe I just need to get good at handling these excuses because I make these same ones myself. And I think the other thing, too, is, like, from a sales perspective, I can think of plenty of examples where, like, I really appreciated a quality salesman. And I, like, a poor salesperson, like with poor sales skills, bothered me, to my core, because like just the experience wasn't good. I wish they maybe would have pushed me. I maybe wish that they would have been, more competent to kind of make recommendations. Like I can think of tons of examples where like I want a great salesman, like if I went and I was considering buying a house or buying a nice vehicle or buying a boat, like I would want someone that knew their stuff, that was excited, that was like happy to sell me the product. And so like, I don't think that there has to be this feeling of like guilt every time that you sell either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. As pharmacists, there's kind of this motto or I guess stigma that we have to give everything away for free. And I don't know where that started, but it really needs to end because it's miserable. I mean, every patient that's ever come into your pharmacy and they say, oh, I don't want to pay for my $3 copay, but yet you're going to go walk out the door, go to the gas station, get a $7, pack of cigarettes, or you're going to get a 30 rack of Busch lattes. Like, people are willing to spend money on things that they find important. So if you can create the value for them, you're going to not only improve their health, but they're going to trust you more, and they're going to be a recurring patient. So, not to go off, but
I think the value piece that you bring up there is like goes back to your initial point of talking to patients, because I think some pharmacies might struggle because if you're too high volume, it really like it's hard to talk to patients when you have long lines and you're just like high volume, pharmacy. Right. My dad kind of falls into that category a little bit where they do close to 20,000 scripts a month. So it's really hard for them to like have conversations during certain points of the days with their patients. But for many of the pharmacies, your average pharmacy that's doing 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 scripts a day, right? When someone comes in the door and you positively greet them, ask them about their day, all the corny, tacky stuff that like people don't think matters, like Logan's talking about, you find out what they value. And then when you do make the recommendation because of the, drug-induced nutrient depletion based on the medications that they're taking, instead of talking about like, here's why XYZ supplement will help you, it's, hey, Jerry, you know how you just told me that you love the water ski? Well, if you don't take this supplement or you keep taking this medication, like, here's why water skiing has gotten a little bit harder for you more recently. And you're mapping the solution around how to get Jerry to water ski more often, not just like, hey, Jerry, right, generically, you're going to have more energy. Like, if you can speak to the specifics of what they want, and that only comes through conversation, that's not just going to come up like out of the blue. Like, you're going to have the ammunition, you're going to have the things that you can speak to that tugs on the heartstrings or, makes them feel that emotion. It makes them want to move forward. And so 100%. That's one of the things that you've done really well with in the different pharmacies that you've been at. It's getting to know the patient well enough to where when you do have a solution, you're talking about it specifically to them, not just in generic terms.
Right. It's all about asking good questions, like no matter what. So if someone tells me like their date is bad, I say, oh, tell me why. What's going on? And then they say, well, I'm underneath a lot of stress at work. Tell me more. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? Are you overeating? There's all those questions that you just follow up on. And I don't know. I think part of it is that you're just building that trust. And, there's not too many people that you go to these days that really care. If you go to a doctor's office, not to slam on doctors, but like you get in there, you sit down for 30 minutes in the waiting area, go in the room for 15 minutes, you see your doctor for like 3 minutes total, you leave. Unless you're in a small town and you see this, have a real relationship. You don't have relationships with too many providers. It's not like you can just walk into your provider's office and talk to your provider for 15 minutes. You can do that in a pharmacy. And I want to take another concept of this is for the individuals that say, I don't have time to do this, make time and train your team. And I think that's where those the cards come in really well, because you don't, as a pharmacist, have to be the one that makes the recommendation. And I hate to use the word champ, like find your champion. You hear that all the time. I think it's really, I personally don't like the term. I think your team needs to be on board. Hey team, this is what we're going to be doing. This is why we're going to be doing it. And this is how we're going to do it. You implement that strategy in, you teach them the education. Then you can say, hey, if you bonus or if you help out X amount of dollars worth of patients, I'm going to bonus you.
Give a real incentive for your staff to be on board.
Right, because no one's going to want to do more work for nothing. It's just the way I think humans are. Nothing. I mean, there's probably some people who will do anything for nothing, but the vast majority of people don't want to work harder than they need to. But if there's a carrot at the end of the stick, right, they're going to go after that. So don't always feel like the pressure's on you, because at my first team that I did this with, I had to train them because I didn't have the time. And I don't mean that in a bad, like in like the realistic ways. I'm checking 150 scripts by myself and I've got one technician and a driver. It's a lot to do on kind of your own. So get your team involved. That's a big piece of this too. Because if you're not there, then no one's making those recommendations and it's not going to help your business at all. And people will start to notice. So jump off.
100%. Yeah. Well, I mean, it just goes back to the point of like, just in general, you want to remove bottlenecks or remove concentration risk is like another fancy term. So like if one person is the sole person that can make recommendations for supplements, what if that person leaves? Right now, no one can. Right. And so the more people that you can obviously train to do certain things, the less important any one person is. Not that you don't want great people on your team, but if one person is too valuable to your team, if they leave, you're screwed. And then you got a whole bunch of work to get back to a point, where you were at one point. So it's easier to train people when you do have other great people already on your team, because it's, hey, go follow X, Y, go follow Jamie for a week, versus you have no one to even look up to. You have no one to like in the day to day to learn from. So take advantage of it if you do have a great person on your team, and get your team involved as well. Create competitions, create incentives, whatever you need to do. to get them on board as well. So I think Logan and I both know that we could talk about this for a long time. We're passionate about it. That's why we made a physical product as a like digital marketing kind of consulting company. We just felt like it was a physical product that was worth making. But to put a bow on this episode, I think it would be, and if Logan, if I miss anything, make sure you chime in. But I think the bow on this episode, the recap would be start, learn as you go, be willing to learn as you go. Yep. Obviously that means kind of like investing in yourself, being a continuous learner. It's not like you ever got to a point, you finish 8-4M and you're like, yep, I'm good. Like you're always still trying to learn. Right. Be willing to talk to your patients and make recommendations starting yesterday. And then don't be afraid of sales. And whether it's the supplement sales set, which is what we made, awesome, cool, use it. Or if it's other sales training, there's plenty of good books, etc. Obviously recommend just furthering your education and sharpening your axe, just in general. So unless I missed anything, man, I think we could wrap that episode up on that.
Yeah, especially with Christmas time coming around, I think we're good to wrap this puppy up.
Oh, the dad joke. Incredible. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys listening. As always, if you do like it, awesome. Like it. Like the video. If you like it enough that you want to hear more, obviously make sure to subscribe. Otherwise, we'll have another guest on our next podcast. And we can't wait to keep pumping these out. And if you are interested, you can go to shop.growthfarm.com to check out the supplement sales set that Logan and I made, and that we've gotten pretty good feedback on, and are more than willing to dish you some out to your team. It'd be a great little stocking stuffer at the pharmacy. So if that's what you're looking for, that's where you can get it. Otherwise, just get better somewhere. Whether it's with us or with someone else.
100%.